Hey, welcome. So, we've spent a lot of time talking about why we as consumers buy the things we do. But today, we're flipping the script. We're going to look at the other side of the coin, the producers. We're going to unpack the simple rules that drive every single business decision out there. Ready? Let's get into it.
Let me ask you something really simple. Imagine your boss walks in and says they're going to pay you more per hour. Are you going to be a little more tempted to take on that extra shift? Yeah, of course. For pretty much all of us, that's a no-brainer. And believe it or not, that very simple idea is the absolute core of the law of supply.
So, when economists talk about supply, what do they actually mean? It's not just how much stuff a factory can possibly make. It's the amount they are willing and able to put on the shelves for sale, right now. Those two words, willing and able, are everything. It's the difference between what's sitting in a warehouse and what's actually up for grabs.
And that brings us right to the main event, the foundational rule that explains how all those producers behave. Let's lay it out.
Okay, so that's the textbook definition, but all it's really saying is that there's a direct connection. Price goes up, producers see a chance to make more money, so they put more out there. Price goes down, the incentive just isn't as good, so they supply less. Now, that little phrase, other things remaining the same, is super important. It's like a little asterisk that means, for now, we're pretending nothing else is changing.
Reading a definition is one thing, but it's way easier to understand when you can actually see it. So let's turn this idea into a picture, and we'll start with a basic chart of numbers.
This is what we call a supply schedule. It just lays out the relationship in plain sight. Look at the pattern here. If the price is only $1, producers are only willing to supply 20 units. But jack that price up to $5, suddenly they're ready to sell 100 units. It makes perfect sense, right? More money on the table means more product on the market.
And this is what happens when you plot those numbers on a graph. You get the supply curve. See that? It slopes up and to the right. That upward slope is the law of supply, visually. Every single one of those points on the line, A, B, C, D, and E, matches up perfectly with a price and quantity combo from the table we just looked at.
But here's where it gets interesting. We all know the real world is complicated. That little assumption we made that other things remain the same, well, that almost never happens. So what happens when reality crashes the party?
Okay, now let's talk about the real-world factors that can come in and totally change the supply game, shifting that entire curve we just drew.
These are what we call supply shifters. So, for example, imagine a breakthrough in technology, a new machine that makes things way cheaper to produce. Well, that would encourage companies to supply more at every single price. But on the flip side, what if the government slaps a new tax on a product? Suddenly it's more expensive to make, and producers will supply less at every price. These things don't just move us along the curve, they shift the entire curve left or right.
So we know these factors can change the supply landscape. But even without them, there's still a huge question left. We know that when price goes up, supply goes up. But does it go up by a little or a lot? Just how sensitive are producers to a change in price?
To answer that question, we need a new concept. In economics, this is called elasticity, and it's really just a fancy word for measuring responsiveness.
You can basically think of it as a responsiveness score. It tells us exactly how much supply reacts to a price change. Does a 10% price hike lead to a tiny little 1% bump in supply, or does it cause a massive 50% surge? Elasticity tells us the story.
And here's the simple math behind it. You just take the percentage change in the quantity that's supplied, and you divide it by the percentage change in the price. The number you get from that calculation is your elasticity score.
This makes it super clear. When supply is elastic, it means it's really responsive. Think about t-shirts. If the price goes up, it's pretty easy for factories to just start making more of them. On the other hand, inelastic means it's not responsive at all. The perfect example? An original painting by an artist who's no longer with us. The price could go to $1 billion, but the supply is forever stuck at 1. You just can't make more.
Now, economists break this down into a few different categories, but we're going to focus on the 3 most common shades of responsiveness you'll see out in the wild.
First up, we've got relatively elastic supply. See how the curve on this graph is pretty flat? That shows us that just a small little bump in price causes a much bigger increase in the amount supplied. The supply is super sensitive to price. This is what you see with products that are easy to ramp up production for.
And here's the exact opposite. Relatively inelastic supply. The curve is really steep. This means that even if you have a massive jump in price, you only get a tiny little increase in supply. It's just hard to produce more, so supply isn't very responsive. Think about something like building new houses in a crowded city. You can't just snap your fingers and make more. And finally, right in the middle, we have unitary elastic supply. This is the Goldilocks scenario. It's where the percentage change in price leads to the exact same percentage change in supply. It's a perfectly proportional one-to-one response.
Okay, so that leaves one last big question. What actually makes the supply of one product elastic and another one inelastic? What are the key ingredients that decide this? Well, it really comes down to four main things. First, the type of product. It's way easier to stockpile and supply durable goods like cars than it is for something perishable, like avocados. Second, and this is a huge one, is time. In the short run, supply is often inelastic because a company is stuck with its current setup. But give them a few years, they can build new factories, hire more people, and supply becomes way more elastic. Third is cost. If it's cheap and easy to make one more item, supply is elastic. And finally, technology. Simple tech means you can scale up easily, but really complex tech, like for building computer chips, means supply is much more inelastic.
So, if there's one thing to take away, it's this. The basic law of supply is super simple. Higher price means higher quantity. But to really understand how it works in the real world, you have to look at all those other things, technology, time, cost, that decide just how much higher it's going to be.
But at the end of the day, it all starts with that one simple idea, that direct relationship between the price a company can get and the amount of stuff they're willing to sell.
So I'll leave you with a question to chew on. Think about the smartphone in your hand or in your pocket. Given everything we've just talked about, the complex technology, the massive factories, the long production times, do you think its supply is elastic or inelastic? Thinking about the why is a great way to see how these big economic ideas play out with the stuff we use every single day.